Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm your host, Josh Pies, and this is the show where scrappy founders, rebellious visionaries, and business misfits pull back the curtain on what it really takes to build something extraordinary from absolutely nothing. No trust fund, no fairy god investor, just grit, duct tape, caffeine, yeah, and that dream. We're talking about the wild, unfiltered ride of turning chaos into cash flow and ideas into impact. So buckle up. This is no Disney movie, but there might be some magic. Let's face it, even Elon started in a garage. So without further ado, let's get to the next episode. Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns, presented by C47 Digital Studios. Bootstrapped Unicorns, it's Josh Pies. I am back with another episode with a good friend and oddly, he's much younger than me, but a bit of a mentor because he is my business coach, Tayler Foutz from Take Form. And I don't know if you're being coached, but if you're an entrepreneur or a would-be entrepreneur and you don't have a business coach, you're in trouble. And the reason why you're in trouble is I know firsthand that you can't know it all, you can't think it all, you can't see every angle. There are things that you need to unlock in you and your ability to operate your business that are not going to happen on your own. And I know firsthand because I can tell you as a testimonial, I've worked with Tayler for about 1.5 years now, and some of my own crap, which I have, and I know you have too, you might not know it yet, has been filtered out. But our business is healthier, it's stronger, and in a position to grow because I've got somebody on my team who has no filter and a lot of experience. And so it's been really, really good for me, and we've built a nice relationship. And so I kind of want to feature that on this episode because I think it's important that you audition the idea of having a coach. And if you hire him, cool, great. If you find somebody else you can trust, cool, great. But from me to you, if you don't have one, you are missing the boat and, dare I say, maybe screwing up. So unicorns, entrepreneurs, this episode is me calling you on the carpet with somebody I trust to help me call you on the carpet. Tayler, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, how's that intro? Did we cover the bases?
It was wonderful. A beautiful testimonial, and I think that you hit it on the head. I think that the objective view of a third party is one of the main reasons that you engage in any sort of coaching partnership. So that's kind of what you alluded to. So it's beautiful.
Awesome. So you and I were cross-boarding a little bit on WhatsApp yesterday about what we're going to talk about today, and one of the things that I did when we first met was I took a little time to vet you. And it was to a certain degree born from a pet peeve of mine. I've run in a big coaching circle. I've done countless video productions for coaches and mentors and all of these different characters in the industry. Only to find out that many of them were failed entrepreneurs or never had run a business and had gone and gotten a certification that they thought they could kind of pull information off the shelf and just become the guru for people. And I've just seen it go so poorly. And so in my opinion, there has to be a verifiable business expertise in the background that's informing a lot of the relationship. And that's what I really enjoyed about meeting you and learning that you've been there and done that in a lot of ways. So could we talk about two things? One, I want to find out so that everybody knows some of your background pre-business coach, but then I'd love to unpack what this phenomenon is and the difference between person with certification and person with life experience. Maybe life experience and certification go together. I don't know, but there is a difference. I've witnessed it firsthand and it bugs me. So with all of that said, first of all, pre-coaching, who was Tayler? What were you doing?
That's great. So before I entered into the world of business at large, I was actually in medicine. So I operated as a CNA and EMT and then ultimately as a paramedic for a good season of my life. And my ultimate game plan was to be an emergency room doctor. So I'm super far off course at this point, but I'm purposely doing it, and that's okay. But I operated in medicine and emergency medicine for a really long time. And then I took a shift, a sabbatical of sorts, and for several years, I worked in ministry. And during that time in ministry, I was responsible for the well-being, the training, and the overall engagement with about 300 to 450. It fluctuated from month to month, but 300 to 450 different individuals that were actively in a specific area proselyting, giving service, and engaging with the community. So going from medicine, where the emphasis was to help people, right? My ultimate goal was someone was sick. I needed to take care of them and make sure that their well-being was improving and or was no longer an issue, and they were able to resume normal activities, to ministry, where the actual effort or the goal was the same, which was the well-being of individuals that were within my purview or were on my watch, just in a different format. I then kind of found my way as a byproduct of speaking at several congregations across the country, running into individuals who would become some of my first mentors, who were business coaches in specific industries, and they were at the top of their game. They were renowned in their spaces. And as a byproduct of hearing me speak in some of these congregations, we got to become associated. They needed assistance in their businesses, which then allowed us to collaborate, come together, and I kind of got an immediate mentorship or a direct connection into the coaching consulting space, which would lead to the creation of my first company with some partners of mine within kind of that same purview. So I was somewhat of a paramedic, somewhat of a minister, 100% of a hooligan, and really just looking to help people regardless of whether that was physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. That was kind of the name of the game for me.
Well, and you're skipping over name dropping, and I notice, can I bring up Gary? I won't say his last name unless you give me permission. Okay, so you spent a lot of time with Gary Keller. So for those who are watching, I'll bet half of you are like, Gary Keller, and then the other half are like, who's Gary? So Keller Williams, the big realty firm, he's the OG, he's the founder, he's the guy. And to get access to Gary Keller, and I know a lot of realtors in town are in the Keller Williams crowd, and they will brag about the moment they shook Gary's hand. Like, this guy's celebrity level, and he has earned it. He genuinely has earned it, and he's got a great reputation. And you spent an inordinate amount of time with him, working for him, innovating for him. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'll be honest, I knew all of the other part of the story in general, but when you talked about your experiences at the high levels with Keller Williams, that was what made me go, yeah, he might be a kid in comparison to me, but this kid can work with me all day. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the direct link to Gary Keller was from my first mentor, who his space of expertise as a coach was in real estate. And so he was coaching at the time over 50 of Gary Keller's top 100 real estate teams in the country. So he had a pretty stacked roster.
Out of the top 100.
It is a very good ratio, and to this day he's very, very prominent in that space, and he does really, really well for himself. And so the way that the introduction started is that my mentor had garnered Gary's attention because of his expertise, because of how many of his top agents were working with him. And it kind of entered into an opportunity where Gary approached my mentor at the time for an opportunity to take the methodologies that he had used in real estate coaching that have been so successful in his philosophies around coaching, and white labeling those for generalized businesses outside of real estate. So the initial connection to Gary was through my mentor. And then as a byproduct of that, and this is really the first company, it was Gary came, said, hey, we really like what you guys are doing with the agent. We want to take this to outside and ancillary businesses. Let's talk about what that looks like. And it ended up that we were able to create a company that at the time facilitated about $2.8 billion in clientele revenues in all sorts of different industries. We were able to white label the methodologies and the philosophies that had been so successful with my mentor and his clientele over the course of that time. And we were able to make it applicable to all industry bases. In addition to that, we were at the time up to about 45 coaches who were actively working with those clientele, and we were building something super, super awesome. And so the interactions with Gary were really associated with the team and with the engagement of building the business. But I've never seen someone be so short but so clear at the same time. And I think that when I think about interactions with individuals that are of high status, high wealth, and of high success, that seems to be a theme across the board. They understand what they want. They understand when they want it. They understand exactly how they anticipate it will go. And your role in that is to essentially facilitate against that vision as a byproduct of the collaboration. So it was a very humbling experience. And it's one of those things where it was just lucky to be in the right room at the right time. People ask me, how do you get into those rooms? And similar to how you become a billionaire, there's hard work that's involved. There's preparation, and sometimes the stars align and you get really lucky, and you just have to say yes to something that you're not sure will go anywhere. And it's a little bit of luck, a little bit of gambling, and a little bit of preparation that all go into getting into that right spot.
Yeah, well, and I've said this on the show numbers of times. I'm sure you've listened to every single episode of my show, so you would know. And of course, completely facetious. Thomas Jefferson's credited with having said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." And so there is that element of hard work and preparation makes you ready for when you walk into the opportunity, but the opportunity might not either be identifiable or not even exist without your preparedness. Because you could walk into a room with a billionaire who could spend money with somebody who's prepared, but if you're unprepared, they'd never have the presence of mind to do it. They would just say you're another body in the room. But if you're prepared and somehow that can manifest its proof to that person, suddenly the opportunity is building itself in the moment. And so, yeah, your story is a really good example of, yes, it's luck, but you were also the person who had been living a life in preparation to allow that quote unquote luck to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a law of attraction. What do you think? So are you a law of attraction person? Do you buy into any of that?
So I wouldn't, and I've told you this on coaching calls just routinely. I wouldn't consider myself very hippy dippy in terms of a lot of different principles, but I do believe that what you put out, you get back, right? And what you seek for, there's a certain level of manifestation that, although I would categorize it as somewhat hippy dippy, has repeated statistical proof of existing. And so it's hard for me to refute as it pertains to the numbers, right? People, when they manifest, when they decide that they want something and then they align current decisions with that desired outcome, there's a significantly higher likelihood that it comes about regardless of the actual statistical likelihood, which is odd because it feels like an anomaly. But the reality is that there's too many instances of people understanding the risk reward and understanding their chances of success, doing the right thing, which is critical, right? And aligning today with what you want in the future, and then verbalizing and or saying, this is what I want, and then ultimately achieving it regardless of the actual outcome. So it's one thing I would say, yes, I do believe in the law of attraction as it pertains to like a manifestation, and that what you put out, you get back.
Yeah. And so I like unpacking this on the philosophical side. I subscribe to the idea that it's kind of like the reticular activating system, where if you buy a red Jeep, suddenly everybody else is driving a red Jeep because you become so aware of your car that you become aware of all of the similar vehicles. And then, I've talked with, do you know Paul Martinelli from originally the John Maxwell team, and he's empowerment mentoring. And Paul, he goes so far as to talk about the vibration of the universe, where your molecules are vibrating in a certain way and at certain frequencies and at certain harmonics and all of these things. And and the Bruce Liptons of the world will say that you can literally heal yourself from cancer if you think it and you will it, because your body will allow those vibrations to heal and all this stuff. And I don't know if I'm ready to wear the entrepreneurship crystal and pray at the foot of the vibration gods, but I think the RAS thing, the RAS, reticular activating system thing, is somewhat in line with the Thomas Jefferson idea of preparation. You're very aware of your preparation. You're ready for identifying opportunities that probably would have existed without your awareness, but you would not have known. Therefore, you have manifested.
Correct. We're on the same page as far as that's concerned, right? I think that's really the scientific breakdown. It's not I want this, I'm not going to change anything, and ultimately it comes about. There's, I want this, the opportunities become ever present in my ecosystem. And as long as I'm actively working and preparing and doing the work in order to be able to facilitate that opportunity that I want, I'm in a position to capitalize on it. And it significantly it increases the likelihood that it will come about.
Yeah. Awesome. So, and I know, another thing that when I first met you, I was calling all of your coaching clients and being like, is this guy for real? Is this guy for real? And I kept calling, and I talked to maybe 5 or 6 different people. And finally I was convinced that 1, they weren't all your siblings, and 2, and they weren't, but and to show you how jaded I am about the industry, right?
Yeah.
I have
As you
met
should be, by
enough
the
of
way.
this. Okay, right. Yeah,
As you should be. Justifiable.
there's a lot of charlatans and snake oil salespeople in the industry, and you got to be really careful. And and I'm calling out some people I actually like, they're friends, but I don't think they're even aware that they're not cut out or qualified for what they think they're going to do as their next career. And so I was calling all these people, and I noticed none of them had the same desires or problems I had outside of genericisms, right? They all wanted better for their business. They all had different goals though, and they had very different industries. And I'm wondering from a coaching perspective, and I think this is, again, our audience today is my usual audience of fellow entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs. My goal is to scale my business, is to make sure that we're not only healthy, but we have a scale plan so that we're in 2025. So in 2035, we are 100x what we are today. And that's my plan, but not everybody's plan. And we're all going to have different paths. And I know that. What is it about your way of doing what you do that is applicable to all, and how are you helping people solve their individual problems? How do we talk about that?
So I think the way that we talk about it is in association with how the industry has evolved, right? And it goes back to my big tagline, right? Is partnerships over programs. There's a lot of programs. There's a lot of 5 steps to 5 million, or 10 steps to 10 million, or X, Y, and Z, right? And it's not to say that information is bad or that those steps aren't applicable or that there's elements of them that are viable. It's just that each individual is so different. Their behavioral style is different. Their past struggles are different. Their current opportunities are different. Take into account what leverage they may have, their current financial situation. There's a lot of variables that would impede a 5 steps to 5 million to being applicable. Not necessarily in information, because information is wonderful, but in direct application for success to the individual, it gets really, really complicated to cookie cut something like that because it is so interesting. And so that's the first part, is that industry-wide it's become very, very common to white label a generalized bit of information for everybody. One, because it's easier. It's easier to scale something like that. But the second piece is that because it's easier, because having to think about every individual and take into account all of those variables takes time and attention. And it's not something that a lot of people are willing and or able to do, right? Because they don't have the expertise or they don't have the verified information about different industries. And so they just kind of can it, essentially. The other factor, it goes into desire, right? And so you bring up an interesting point. You have this desire over the next 10 years to 100x. Some people, their goal of their business is not to 100x. It's to attain some level of financial freedom, to free themselves away from corporate America to some degree. And those are not bad things. I think that as we think about entrepreneurship, it's become this very ostentatious ecosystem, very flashy. I make more money, I do this. But the reality is that entrepreneurship is synonymous with freedom. And it's an opportunity for each individual to have a unique definition for what that freedom means to them, and then build whatever cultivates that for them. And that can be easier said than done. Obviously, there's work that goes into that. But the reality is that when we think about making sure that each individual is taken care of, to your original point, we have to take into account who they are, their behavioral style, their past, their current realities, and a lot of other variables in conjunction with their desired outcome, so that we can create a unique plan for them for sustainable growth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The thing that came to mind during this is that I know you've made a whole bunch of changes recently for yourself too, and you're an entrepreneur. I mean, this is your business. And when I got my MBA in entrepreneurship, a big topic back then, and it was just because it was a buzzword, was lifestyle entrepreneur versus scaling entrepreneur. And so it was 2 different desire sets, and it was a little bit of a hippie moment in the entrepreneurship crowd to realize that there were people who were doing entrepreneurship for the freedom, which is ironic because it takes so much work to become the entrepreneur who is successful enough to not starve. And that amount of work is like, oh, I'm working really hard to become free later. And then there was that conversation like, well, why don't I just be free now, reset my standards and expectations, live smaller, so I can work less and be more free. But sometimes freedom has a cash value to it, which is just complicated. And then, of course, there's a scaling entrepreneur who goes, I'll be free when I'm rich, but let's get rich first. And I know you just recently, I mean, you've moved to Spain. You are still coaching mostly Americans, I think.
All of them. Yeah. All
right.
American businesses. Yeah.
And we've only hung out in person twice. So that's I mean, we don't need to hang out. It's very fruitful digitally. So all of that works. But I can tell you're doing an interesting thing with lifestyle design, because I also know you well enough to know that you've got your nutrition supplement business as well that is preparing for launch and scale at the same time. So let's talk about this through you. Like, you are designing your life right now. And I think we entrepreneurs all, at some level, this whole thing is about designing our lives. We may be passionate about our business and the problems that we solve, but when we step back, we're really solving the problem of designing our lives. And you're doing that seemingly quite well. And it seems like you're having some fun. So what prompted this? What lifestyle design are you doing as the entrepreneur?
So before we get into me, I think this is interesting because I think that freedom could be synonymous with the definition of wealth. And the way that I define wealth is a life free of anxiety. And so when we think about freedom, people really don't want freedom. They want wealth, which is they want a lack of anxiety, right? They don't have to worry about their bills paid. They don't have to worry about being anywhere specifically. There's a lot of things where they just want the capacity to be able to choose. And that's what wealth and freedom kind of synonymously represent, right? Is the capacity for choice, right? And so to go off our previous point, that's going to be different for every person, right? I have friends that make under $100,000 a year. They live in Costa Rica. They surf most of the time, and they are happy as clams. And not in like a facetious way or like an unintelligent way. They're very smart people. They understand what they're doing, but genuinely, that is what they want. And they've created this life where they have everything they could possibly want and need within that ecosystem. They are free. They are wealthy as it pertains to their definition. And it's amazing, right? And so going back to it, and every person needs to define, like, what is freedom? What is wealth? What do I want? And then you have to create the life around that, right? In addition to that, I think that there are seasons to things, right? So and again, I think there's seasons to entrepreneurship, and it's not a direct circular season, right? It's not a direct circle of intensity and flow. It's very volatile depending upon circumstances and desire, right? And so in the U.S., we had, there was a lot of work being done. Companies were being built. There was a lot of things that were happening. When we kind of divested from the States a little bit and we said, hey, like, we're going to move to Spain. One, my wife grew up in Spain. We have family here. We wanted to be closer to them, especially after the birth of our first daughter. We knew that we'd been running pretty fast and hard, and we said, let's take a second to breathe. So we popped over here, kind of understanding that it was an unknown as far as the time frame that we were going to be here, and understanding that that was okay. And there was a good year, give or take, where I was in a position where I was coaching. I had divested. I was really comfortable. I had a lot of time with my 1-year-old daughter and my wife. We really enjoyed ourselves. And then opportunities came up via some partnerships and some new business opportunities, and there was decisions to make, right? Not that there was discomfort in the current lifestyle, right? But what do I actually want to chase next, right? And there was some yeses that were said in association with a few different businesses. So I've begun partnership. There's 3 new businesses that I'm currently a partner with. We're in the launch phase. We're getting some partnerships set up with some pretty large companies, and it's exciting, right? Our distribution partners are going to be big, and it's going to be exciting. And I've had to work a lot more, right? So there's been less time with my daughter, less time with my wife, a lot of later nights, right? Things of that nature. But understanding that that's being done gladly because of a larger vision, and understanding that although that wasn't my vision a year ago, it's my vision now. And this season of hustle may provide me an opportunity for another respite or another season of calm in the future. And I'll take that moment and I'll be a little bit calm and we'll be good to go. And then maybe a new opportunity will come and I'll go back into the crazy. And that's A-okay to do. It's not a hustle and a grind forever towards some perfect reality that we're pursuing. It's understanding the ebbs and flows dependent on desire and current ecosystem, if that makes sense. I think I answered
Oh, it
that
makes a
question.
ton of sense. And, I wonder, what I'm hearing is something that I think is different than a lot of goal setting conversations that I have, because a lot of people will be like, you set your 1, your 3, your 5, your 10-year goals or visions or whatever term you want to put around it. But the idea is that you've got a way of having a target to aim at. Because just, if you're traveling with no destination, you're sure to end up somewhere that you could not pre-predict. However,
Yeah.
if you've got a destination, you might have a lot of pathways to get there, but there's a good chance you'll land at your destination, especially thanks to GPS and maps and whatever we have in a modern world. And from an entrepreneurial perspective and a leadership perspective, we know that self-leading usually is attached to some kind of goal setting. But what you just described seems to be divested of a 10-year or 20-year or 50-year goal and vision. It seemed near and midterm in conversation. And I wonder, and you don't have to necessarily reveal it, but you're welcome to, are you goal setting a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan? Is there something that you're aiming at in relation to that? Or do you have a different way of in your way of goal setting and keeping yourself accountable to yourself?
So as it pertains to long-term goal setting, I like to think about directional clarity as opposed to destination clarity, if that makes sense, because
for me it does, but flesh it out.
Yeah, well, and so the reality is that everyone's worried about having this perfect vision of themselves at 60 years old and everything that they want. And I think as an exercise, it's really good to do. I think if you have no clarity as to what you want in your life, absolutely go to the end or the perceived end of your life and what are all the things you have and where are you at and what have you done with your life. But the reality is that when we think about life generally, it is filled with chaos. And chaos isn't a negative term. It's just the uncontrollable, right? There may be an opportunity that pops up 5 years from now for you that completely detracts from a plan that you've set for yourself where you perceive this 20-year reality, right? And so it puts you in a position where you say, do I forego that 20-year reality to chase this opportunity and everything's different and I have a new final destination, okay? Or we ask ourselves, is this in line directionally with where I want my life to go, right? Is this in line with what I want to accomplish and who I want to become and what I want to learn? And understanding that it's okay to take turns and to have a few different back roads that you travel, as long as directionally you're going in the right direction, if that makes sense. So for me, I think of it as a directional clarity as opposed to a finish line clarity, because I could get a call tomorrow from somebody and they present something to me that I can't say no to that completely alters my life. Moves me to Thailand, which was not something I was thinking of, or a myriad of other things. But it's not that I don't want growth. It's not that I don't want directional clarity. It's just that I can't plan for an exact reality just because there's so many things that I can't control that could be presented to me in the meantime.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I feel like that goes back to this notion of lifestyle and freedom for entrepreneurs. I mean, there's a vision of how you exist, not necessarily the day-to-day of what you're doing, but I know in my mind, when I'm envisioning retirement, which I don't believe in, I don't believe the shutdown version. I love when I find out there's a 95-year-old entrepreneur still taking pitch meetings. I'm like, that guy is cool because he chose to just keep going. He might be less active, I would hope, and maybe enjoying some more time with family, but the idea that he's still engaged in the business world, and I've actually met a couple of those and hung with them, and they are the coolest.
Yeah.
And I've met those people who are starting to have early onset Alzheimer's because they shut down at 62 because they could afford to, and they don't even golf, right? So you don't want that. But I know for myself, I look at what does 70 look like? And I'm hitting a few more rock concerts. I'm definitely sipping coffee overlooking an ocean view while my wife is reminding me that I've had too many cups of coffee and moving on to her Diet Coke still, which is terribly ironic because it's the same issue, caffeine. And I some of those things where it's us and we have a few more wrinkles, but we're just a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more time free is all I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm guilty of reading Think and Grow Rich like 30 times, right? And
Good book.
chapter 2, one and two, establish that major definite purpose and what you're going to put into the world and what you're going to get out. And you've got to literally write down exactly what you're going to have in the future. And I think that's been a trap temporarily for me, because you get too focused on that, but for a lot of people. And so the destination thing, and what was it? You said a destination, and what was the term?
Direction.
You used it. Direction. Thank you. I think direction is freeing. It's freeing that you can chase the opportunities to get you in the direction. I like that.
And it's not this is where the dichotomy gets kind of fun, because it's not that it gives anyone an excuse not to try to garner as much clarity as they can, right? Obviously, the goal of clarity in the future, garnering future clarity, helps aid current action, right? And so when we think about where we're going, we want to garner as much clarity as possible. But we also understand that things will pop up that will alter what that reality becomes, and it will require consistent revisions. And this is where the emphasis goes in regards to the direction as opposed to the destination, because we will trip over ourselves. And we'll start to say no to things that we should say yes to, right? Because it's not in line, right? It's not where I want to go. It's not this thing that I've created for myself. You're right. It's not. What you said no to is going to be significantly better for you. You just don't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we wrap this episode up? Because I think a lot of people are starting to get the sense of what a business coach could bring to them through a conversation like this. But I would like a rubric from you. I don't know quite how this will work. I was going to ask for the top 5 questions that somebody should be asking of their business coach to set them up to make a decision on whether they would want to hire that person. Maybe it's not 5. Maybe it's a thought process. But what should people ask of their business coach, their potential business coach, so that they can get their head around whether this is the person for them? Hard question. I knew this was going to be a hard one.
There are a lot of questions that I think about, right? And so this is something that conscientiously the listeners should know about business coaching. You don't hire a business coach to do the work for you, and you don't hire a business coach to set the plan in place for you. You hire a business coach to have a board of directors and a conscience that's been uploaded into your ecosystem. Simultaneously, someone that has experience that can aid you in problems that you're actively having where you don't have the information yourself. So they don't set the direction. They don't make the decision necessarily, and they're not going to tell you what to do. If you're looking for someone to tell you what to do, you should just go back and get a job, because that's what's going to happen. If you're in entrepreneurship, it comes with having to think and garner clarity and make decisions. And if you're looking for someone to do that for you, you need a boss. You don't need a coach, okay? And there are coaches that will tell you what to do, but it goes back to the point we made previously, is that there's no cookie cutter way to do this. So if you start taking orders from a coach that you've hired to tell you what to do, they're going to build it their way. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it no longer becomes your business in the same vein that you would like it to be. It takes on a entirely new form, okay? So I think that the first thing that I would always ask a coach genuinely is, how do you perceive that my behavioral style is hindering my business progress? So that's an important one, right? Like, what do you see in interactions with me that is like slowing me down, right? Like, am I quick to anger? Am I slow to make decisions? Do I overcomplicate things? Do I lack organizational skills? Like, what are the pieces of me that you anticipate are screwing me up, right? The second thing is, I would present them with a current problem that you're having, and I would ask for feedback, right? So go right into the weeds with them essentially and test their steel, I guess, is the best way to do it. Say, hey, so this is something that I'm currently having trouble with. I'm not clear on an actual answer. Help me garner clarity on how we can solve X problem, right? Because then you get to see how they're going to coach you through active issues that you're going to have in the future. So you get to kind of see what they're made of, so to speak. And then I think the third question associated with coaching is, I would ask genuinely really why they've engaged in this profession as they have, as opposed to engaging in traditional business ventures, and or if it's a mixture of both. So garnering feedback on their background, but also simultaneously understanding their intentions associated with the engagement too. And to your point at the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot of certifications out there for coaching. Everyone and their grandma during COVID decided that they wanted to become a life coach or a business coach or some form of coach. But the reality is that most people engage in coaching practices because of industry standards and because they are so low from a barrier to entry standpoint. It's a money grab. And they feel like they can engage in dialogue with individuals who are going through difficult times and potentially give them something from a book they read or a canned program that they've either stolen and or cultivated that will justify the cost, right? But the reality is that there are a few individuals who genuinely have an understanding, genuinely want to give back, and understand that entrepreneurship and successful entrepreneurship is quite literally the American dream, and that helping individuals achieve that does not just better the individual, it betters their family, it betters their community, and generally speaking, when small businesses are successful in the United States, it improves the entire economic landscape. And so when you're talking to a coach, it's important to understand why they do what they do and understand that, because intention is more important than engagement.
Yeah, and it falls a lot in line with my skepticism. Anytime I see a Facebook ad targeting me with somebody who's going to unlock the new digital ecosystem that's going to make me a millionaire, and you go, well, why aren't you just doing more of that yourself and not training your competition, right?
Correct.
So it is a good question. You've got to figure out what the intentionality is behind the person who claims to know how to unlock your success. But have they found success? Are they a charlatan? Is it that you're going to be the fuel for their success and not necessarily get the benefit of somebody who knows what they're doing? It's always struggled with that because I just see it too much. And I'm glad you said it that way, because I know you don't want to throw your peers necessarily under the bus, but I will. And it's just, I'd say less than 10% of the people selling services like this actually have the chops to do it, or the right intentions, or any of the background. So entrepreneur, I'm looking right at you. If you're listening to me, my words are going straight into your ear hole and reminding you that coaching is absolutely critical for you, but you can't just find any guy off the street, any gal off the street, and assume that they're the right person for you. Listen to Tayler's advice. That's a simple rubric to ask some key questions, and do follow my advice. My confidence went through the roof after I talked to the people he'd been working with for an extended period of time and found out how successful they had become, and the AB from before and after. Not that he was the whisperer and the miracle worker who caused them to get rich, but he really was credited with unlocking things in them that allowed them to go do the things they were doing. And so you need a person like that in your life who can unlock the amazing things in you, help you kill some of the bad and cultivate some of the good. And so just go do it. And if you're like, I can't afford it, find a way. Because I don't think your business will thrive and let's start with survive and then thrive in the way that you envision without having that accountability partner who has the ability to get you to find the answers that you may even already know but aren't able to capitalize on. So without going any further there, you can also find Tayler. You've got like 1 or 2 slots open out of all of your time slots right now, right?
I do. I've actually got 3 right now, funny enough. So, and that's important for listeners as well. I cap at 40, so I don't have unlimited time. With all the other businesses, I really don't have a lot of time. So I have 3
I'm
spots.
surprised you're not actually shrinking your base actually with the other 3 businesses right now. We should probably talk about that offline. But so 3 slots open right now. So if you need to clamor to talk to them, Tayler, what's the easiest way for people to find you?
Feel free. You can send me an email at Tayler with an E at takeformdevelopment.com, or feel free to message me on Instagram or Facebook at TaylerFoutzOfficial.com. Tayler Foutz Official, not .com. It's social media. This is people. I should be young. I'm like 90 years old inside. Anyways, good. Those are the 2 ways to get to me.
All right, perfect. So fill those 3 time slots for him. I think, we might as well spend time with somebody who's got proven success. And I'm one of those people. So if you got to ask me questions about it, just call me. Unicorns, you know how to find me. So until then, you know how I roll. I have no clue who's going to be on the next episode, but I promise you that person will drive value, because we're inviting only people who can drive value to you as an entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneur. If you haven't joined the Facebook group Bootstrapped Unicorns Marketing and Entrepreneurship Group. It might be Entrepreneurship and Marketing. I frankly don't care. Go find us on Facebook and engage with us. It is an application to join in, but we don't sell in there. I don't charge. I just want to make sure you're actually somewhere on an entrepreneurial journey, and you cannot sell to each other in that group. You can only raise ideas, ask questions, and iron sharpens iron. That's what it's there for. So go join it. Tayler, you're in that, right?
Yep.
I thought so. So you could even say hi to Tayler in there. That's a good thing, right? So I will see you on the next episode. I am so glad you're paying attention here, but now you know what to do. Get back to work.